Well, good afternoon and welcome. Welcome to another of our Wednesday webinar series. The series has been going on since 2013, just not every single Wednesday like we're doing now. And this is our fourth in a series that started back in March 18th on managing your business during the pandemic crisis. And there's a lot of resources that we're going to be going over, a lot of information. I'm excited. One thing we try to do with this webinar series is to keep it as current and as fresh as possible. So therefore, we don't even come up with the topics that we're going to discuss until Monday morning and see what's shaping and where the most critical need is for our small business owners in working through this particular situation. So good afternoon, I'm Kelly Bearden. I'm the director of the California State University Bakersfield Small Business Development Center, or SBDC. And we're located in Bakersfield, obviously. Makes sense. But we cover a broader area than that. We cover a broad area that includes not only Kern, but also Inyo and Mono County. And we are part of the regional SBDC network for the Central California area. And there you will find 5 of our centers. There will be us. There's a Fresno center, actually at Clovis College, a center up in Modesto, and a center on the coast, actually 2 of them, one in Salinas covering Monterey and San Benito counties, and one at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo covering San Luis Obispo County. So please reach out. The SBDCs are all open. They're all assisting clients at this time. There's a lot more work to be done after we get through the EIDL and the PPP and these wonderful acronyms that we're coming up with. So join us again next Wednesday, and we'll be back on the 15th, and we'll be talking about whatever is the most pressing needs of the day at the time. So today I'll be introducing Keith Brice, a guest speaker who is the largest by volume SBA lender in Kern County and has been for a number of years. And we'll be bringing Keith in and introducing him and having him assist us with a lot of what's going on. Just a little bit about the SBDC role in disaster as it continues to evolve. We've been working with the PPP, the disaster loan, and some other assistance for small businesses. But soon we're going to turn the table, and we're going to be maximizing our efforts toward helping you restart your business if it has been completely closed or even partially closed. We'll be also offering additional training webinars on many topics, and those topics are going to be driven by you. We have some that are out there. For example, there's an HR topic. There's a few other things such as state resources and unemployment that we need to get into broader detail that we haven't quite frankly covered because of the urgency on the disaster and the PPP loans. But looking at your cash flow management and your sales recovery and other business areas such as HR assistant, evaluate your opportunities that are created by this disaster. So kind of a recap of what we've done over the past 3 webinar Wednesdays has been the focus on SBA's ever-changing disaster loan and the new stimulus program that features the payroll protection program, or the 3 Ps as I like to call it. We'll also talk about, deferring your debts and expenses. We've done a lot of that and focus on cash flow. And really the big word right now is adapt, is how can you adapt your business in this time of need and to generate customers and to prepare for when we eventually exit this crisis that we're in. So protect yourself, your family, and your workers. Acronyms. In some of the acronyms you'll see we'll use the word EIDL a lot. EIDL really wasn't in our vocabulary until basically 3 or 4 weeks ago, but it's the Economic Injury Disaster Loan through SBA. And it is the economic injury that is the disaster that you will be actually applying for or already have. We have the PPP, which is the payroll protection. Also previously in some of our webinars, we referred to this as the upcoming stimulus SBA loan program. I still will stick with my 3P, it's the shortest. And you guys probably know SBA and SBDC as well as some of those options. Right now I'm going to open up a poll before we get going too far. Do a couple of these polls today. And we'll launch the first poll. And the question that I'd like to see answered is, have you applied with SBA for the economic injury disaster loan? And that is either, yes, I have applied, and please, this is for small businesses. If you really aren't really an applicant for that, say a contractor or something, leave this for our small businesses, and either you applied, you're not going to apply, or you still hope to apply. So we'll give you a few more seconds in that, and then I will end and share the poll results. Kind of a mixed bag, more yes, but definitely some fair amounts of no that are close, and a lot of people still want to apply. Give you another couple of seconds on that, and we'll end the poll, and we'll start sharing the results with you. 52% turnout, so good poll, good statistical mean, I believe. So we'll end the poll and share the results with you. And here they come. So 40% of you have applied for an EIDL loan, and 35% have not, and 38% still want to. So we'll remember that in talking about EIDL today for the 24% that still would like to apply, and have an update in just a little bit on some of the things that we're experiencing in that program. So we'll stop that share and move on. So beyond the acronyms, some of the other things that are our focus today. And our focus today is going to be on the banks for PPP. It is a common question that we have. It's evolving, it's changing. We're here to give you the most current information about that, and potentially even what's happening as far as more funding and other things. We'll give you an EIDL update. We're going to look at some of the, as we start getting into the managing your business part of all this, we're going to look at some of the PPP calculations and looking for ways that you can spend your money once the PPP money does come. Maybe slightly premature, but I think it's something that small businesses really should start thinking about at this time. We're going to have just a small amount on the HR issues, and I really want to do a separate webinar with an HR specialist on this coming up. We'll probably touch on that, but I think our time is going to be consumed with the funding side of things today. Some assumptions and cash flow we've talked about in the past, and we're going to talk about a little bit again today. And of course, always we want your questions and your concerns. So let's bring in our special guest today. And our special guest is Keith Brice, who's the president of the Mid-State Development Corporation, which is a certified lending and certified development company registered through the U.S. Small Business Administration. Keith went to school at the University of Dayton back in the day, and school graduate of banking school. The authorization is only to those certain entities that are allowed to do the very specialized 504 program, of which Mid-State Development and its partners, commercial lenders and others, have done since the inception at Mid-State Development almost $500 million. And these projects have created and retained 12,000 jobs in Kern County. Thanks for joining us, Keith. It's always a pleasure to have you on the webinar. Your insight is also valuable. So thank you again for joining us today.
Thanks, Kelly.
So let's get into this, Keith. I like to start with, what's new today, and there hasn't been that much new today, but I always come up with this happy, National Day Calendar Day. And my choices today was All Is Yours Day, National Empanada Day. I like empanadas. That would have been maybe, and National Zoo Lovers Day. I like a zoo. Maybe sometimes love going to the zoo, but I couldn't. So we decided to actually come up with our own, and it's going to be National Happy Flip the Curve Day. And we've talked about flattening the curve or slowing its growth. I want to flip it. And I want today to be the day that we actually start flipping the curve and start getting our businesses back to normal. So we also have some of the lenders' promises and some of our leaders, actually, both from the Oval Office and then down to the Capitol, that they promised that more PPP dollars will be coming. We have interim final rules that actually came out last Friday or Thursday. And I really like that, interim final rules, because we really thought they were going to be the final rules. And then on Saturday, out came an email from SBA about changes to churches and faith-based organizations. So expect potentially more rules. The bank update on who's in and who's not is going to be new today, and also at least new for today. And then also the EIDL updates, some of our client rumors, and everything might change by tomorrow. So there's your interim final rules. Keith, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you talk a little bit about your experiences with the PPP as the general rules. And as far as this goes, why don't you take it away and give us some PPP background and updated information.
Thanks, Kelly. First off, I got to apologize if you hear some sirens in the background. Our office is 2 blocks away from Bakersfield's main fire station. So unfortunately, we can't mute that out. And one last thing, I am a University of Dayton grad, and there were all probabilities we would have been in the Final Four playing tonight or yesterday. So that is a bummer, but we're going to move forward. I wanted to first start off and let you know, again, what we do at Midstate. Because we are a designated SBA lender for a 504 loan program, which I won't cover a lot of that, we do get a lot of calls on the disaster loan program. Plus, we are listed as a source on the SBA website. So we're averaging probably 25 calls a day. We were getting more last week. It's been reduced a little bit this week. The one thing I will tell you about what we had the ability to do here, and we're quite happy with it, when the CARES Act was passed and monies were designated and allocated to various programs, the SBA was able to carve out some money for existing SBA clients, both under the 7A loan and the 504 loan. And it was a, I don't want to say it was a gift, but it was a significant offering that was made last week to all existing 7A and 504 customers. Their SBA payment was being made by the SBA for 6 months. It's not a deferral. It's not added on the back end, but that's important because we have a lot of clients that had already taken advantage of SBA programs in the past, and they weren't new to the SBA, but they needed to have a benefit. So that's pretty significant. Again, I repeat, if you had an existing 7A and 504 loan active currently, the SBA was making your payment for 6 months. It's not an add-on, it's not interest only, it's a principal and interest payment made. That was big. As Kelly alluded to earlier, this is a ever-changing lending environment with the SBA. And I gotta really put it in the proper perspective. The CARES Act was approved on the 31st. This is a $1 trillion, part of a $1 trillion stimulus package to be implemented in less than 10 days. We're looking at, it's April 8th today, and the process, albeit slow in some of the small business owners' minds, is really moving at warp speed for a government lending program. A little bit more background on when the program was first released, and I'll talk about the PPP. The initial regs or guidelines on the PPP was it was going to be a 4% loan at 10 years. In a relatively short period of time, it changed to 0.5% to 2 years. And as of recent regs, it is 1% for 2 years. So again, I want to emphasize the program has changed quite a bit. And I will tell you, most of the changes have been for the good. One of the challenges that the lending community had or continue to have is, again, they were charged with trying to put loans out in a fairly quick fashion on a program that was relatively new. things that just occurred. Yesterday, the SBA provided the lenders with the actual note that they could use. Last Thursday, the actual application, and I may be off by a day, the application was approved. So you had lenders scrambling to determine, okay, one, what was the application going to look like? And more importantly, how would they be able to incorporate it in their system? So what's new? We've had a couple new developments, and one's really key to a lot of this, the small business owners, is that if in fact you have your PPP application into a lender and the lender has submitted it via electronically, they call it e-trans, and if the lender has an authorization number, then that lender must fund that loan within 5 days. So that's important because there was some guidance out there that was somewhat missing on when am I going to get my money? How am I going to get my money? Well, it's clear now. If your lender, again, I will repeat, if your lender has submitted your application and they've approved it because the approval's with the lender and have received a E-Tran number, then your lender has to fund the loan within 5 days. That's really fast for, again, a relatively new loan program. And that shows you the urgency of the desire to get the money actually into small business owners' hands. The second piece that is new, and Kelly talked about it, is that there is a proposal looking at another $250 billion for small business lending, with $125 billion being carved out for community banks. And that's clearly the SBA, along with elected officials, have seen the demand out there for the program, specifically the PPP loan program. So there's more money being proposed. It's not signed into law yet, but it's in fact been proposed. And the second piece that also has some of us excited and sort of getting in the weeds, in that the Federal Reserve is looking at trying to engage the lending community in the program. And what that means is there's some discussion, again, none of this is final, that they will look at buying some of these loans from the banks. So what does that mean? That means that if you have a bank that's hit their limit on the number of loans committed under the PPP, or loans committed in other programs, but specifically the PPP, that the Federal Reserve may buy those loans, which what that will do is then free up the capacity of that lender to take on more loans. A couple things I wanted to really cover is the lending, what's actually going on in the lending community. Keep in mind that there are PPP guidelines, and then there are bank guidelines within their particular lending platforms. Now, they cannot, fees are consistent, which you should not be paying a fee. Rate is consistent, but how they look at customers that they want to lend money to. And I'll give you some examples. Some banks are looking at limiting their PPP applications to companies with 50 or few employees. So, what happens if you're at 58 or you're at 75? As it stands right now, some banks are capping it at 50 employees. And part of the reasoning is they have a certain amount of dollars that they want to lend, and they feel that they can do more loans by making those particular limits. Pretty sure everybody's heard out there, if you've applied at a few of the major banks, that they are only looking at PPP loans for their existing customers. And they may even be taking a step further. They may be looking at existing customers that have loans also. So you may be a depository customer. I have an automatic light here, so it goes off. So that's why we're in the dark here a little bit. But you may have a deposit with a bank, but you don't have a loan, and you're preparing to submit your application, and you were notified because you don't have a loan. Again, that is a way that lender is narrowing their box of potential loans that they're going to make. Another example that we're seeing, and I don't want to specifically call out too many banks. Everybody knows, the major players, and I want to talk a little bit about the independent banks and talk a little bit about credit unions. But some of the other things that they're looking at is limiting the amount of going from 2.5 times to only 2 times the average monthly salary. Again, that intent is to limit their exposure. And also, some of them are looking at what happens if you have 50 employees, and when it comes time to measure, you're down to 40. Will the ratio at 2 times be more beneficial than 2.5 times? So a couple tips that I want to give you before I'll get into a list of lenders is, if you've applied for your PPP loan, make sure you really understand that you're within the criteria that your lender's looking for. Just because you applied doesn't mean you met their criteria. I'm talking about the internal criteria. I'm not talking about did you meet a size test? Did you meet affiliations? I don't know if we're going to cover any of that, but is your lender looking at funding their customers that have loans outstanding? Is there a size limit? Make sure you know that. And the other thing is, how do you apply? Keep in mind, there are lenders out there that have phenomenal online platforms that can deal with loan volume. And then you have lenders that their online platform is not available to deal with the kind of volume, where you may be going in and actually filling out an application with a relationship manager or a loan officer. Again, find out your lender's process. One of the things that I've been encouraging a lot of our customers here is they need to check on their lender's website 2 to 3 times a day. And I'll give you an example of the reason why. We had a major bank that we're going to start accepting applications supposedly on Monday. They accepted applications on Saturday and had full commitments Sunday. Now, if you're fortunate to get up early Saturday and just happen to go on their website, then there may be a high probability that you had a commitment. So I really encourage that you check your lender's website minimum 2 to 3 times a day. The other piece that I suggest is that you go on the SBA's website. If you've not been on disaster SBA.gov, take some time to go on there. It will have the latest PPP application if you've not gotten it. It will have a question and answer, because a lot of the questions may not be unique to your business and that have been vetted already with the SBA. So go on that website and, I hate to say get in the weeds, but get in the weeds a little bit about what's going on new. I think, Kelly, we're going to talk about a little later on, some real-time EIDL loan success stories, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And another thing is that it's good that we're starting to keep a database at the SBDC also. We have, throughout our region, we have over 100 consultants that are working with small businesses and getting feedback from them. And we're going to keep bringing it back to you. And we started a database because what we were finding is that there are a lot of clients out there that are looking for a new banking relationship. They need a bank that is going to actually do the PPP if they've been shut out of their other bank or their other bank is not participating, and so forth. So that is a little bit of the discussion that we're going to head to now, and try to look at some of the lenders that we've been able to identify that I think, and Keith, I think you'll back me up on this, is that most lenders are at least reaching out, with the exception of some that have closed. I think Citibank has not yet begun to accept applications. I believe Mechanics Banks is now prioritizing applications. You'll get a lot of that. And Keith has heard me say several times that if all the banks just take care of all of their customers, then we won't have a problem in trying to find everybody a bank. But that isn't going to work out that way. So the one thing that's kind of consistent with the list that we're starting to see of those lenders that are making loans to new customers they are demanding a banking relationship. So first you have to open up an account, generally a deposit type relationship. And then you can go online. And oftentimes it's either online or it's through their on-banking portal, which you need to, your online banking portal that you need to use to generally access that account during a normal time period. So I'm going to start with the list that I have, Keith, and then
Hey, Kelly, I want to just remind some people out there, and I want to defend the banks a little bit. Your bank may not be accepting applications right now, and part of the process is, again, we're looking at a fairly quick rollout of a $1 billion loan program that many of the lenders' platform they weren't set up for it. So there's a certain amount of patience that I need you to make sure that you have out there. I talked to a number of lenders that were not set up for the program a week ago, but they're set up now. So this stuff is happening, hourly. Again, the emphasis early on was we want to take care of our customers, and that's still the emphasis. But what I'm seeing, and I think we're going to morph into this, that now the box is opening up a little bit, and there are lenders out there that are looking at non-banking customers, with the caveat that you will get or will establish a lending relationship there.
Yeah, that's important. And also the part that you added at the very beginning about potentially half of the $250 billion coming online, half of that 250 bill going to community banks. And community banks seem to be fairly well represented in the ones that are accepting new applications. And you just have to be ready. If you're a business and you have multiple accounts that have multiple transactions going in and out, this lender is going to most likely want your deposit relationship if you go through this process. So keep that in mind, because that is going to be potentially a burden on some businesses that I've talked to. But
Kelly, I see some questions popping out there, and I sense a frustration on a lot of small business owners, because the very nature of most small business owners is to do and react fairly quickly, and they're in a system or process that doesn't happen that way. The thing that I will challenge and encourage, all the folks out there that are still in the application process is, you have to be tenacious in finding out, do I call a specific number? Do I apply a certain way? If you can get to and it's always helpful, if you can get to a name, and locally, there are names of people that whether they're the branch manager, regional manager, there are names out there. So you have to find out how to get to that name in your respective bank and leverage it as much as you can.
Well said. So let me just run down a list of potential lending sources for those that want to look at other sources that are out there that we are compiling. This is a question that has come up hundreds of times probably, is my bank isn't doing something, who is? And we are starting to compile a list. It could change rapidly. There's some in the Kern County market. We have some such as Valley Strong Credit Union that is starting to do some of these SBA loans, and they're actually doing that, but they have a geographic limitation of Kern, Kings, and Tulare County. And you're going to find a lot of the ones on this list are community banks, and they are geographically limited. There's a couple of banks. Yeah.
Kelly, pardon my interruption. I will tell you, I spoke to a representative from Valley, and Valley Strong, I know you have also. And there are a lot of small businesses out there that have been a member of Valley Strong, formerly Kern Schools Credit Union. So keep that in mind. If you, in fact, are a member, and they are looking at outside businesses, they're being fairly aggressive, but sometimes people forget, well, yeah, I had that, or I have an account, or my wife has it, or my husband has an account there. Again, that's the ability to leverage that relationship there at Valley Strong.
Yeah, sure. Certainly makes the process easier. So if you're in Monterey County, there's a few banks there, the Coast Hills Credit Union and Pacific Valley Bank and Pinnacle Bank. Some that cover more of a vastly geographic area you might be concerned with are SunWest Bank, which covers the entire West Coast. Zions Bank is a bank that's in California, Arizona, Colorado, Nevada, that they're looking at new accounts. And again, banks are going to take care of their own first. So you're still coming into this situation kind of behind the eight ball a little bit. Keith, any other local banks here in Kern County you can think of?
Yeah, I can tell you, I reached out to a lot of the banks on a pretty consistent basis because we partner on different loans. And I talked to a couple community banks this morning, and the question that I asked, and the question that we're getting, quite a bit, as are they taking new clients? And the answer is yeah. Both Mission and Valley Republic Bank confirmed this morning that they would look at new applications. Now keep in mind, they're business banks. They're laser focused on business, but they're also looking at new clients. All the major banks, I will tell you, Union Bank, Wells Fargo. I want to backtrack on that a little bit. Pacific Western. We noticed that Bank of the West is coming online. There's BBVA Compass, Citibank, Citizens Business Bank, and Mechanics Bank. Mm-hmm. What we're seeing is that there are more and more lenders that are coming online. Again, I can't emphasize enough, it was last Friday when it went live with the actual notes not available until yesterday. So this is moving quite rapidly.
So one of the bigger banks that was up over the weekend was Chase Bank, and Chase was up, and then closed and reopened their portal. One caveat that Chase has is that they only will accept your application if it's the only application you've put in. So they will, under, I guess, have you certified that you have no other outside applications that are out there. That's the first actually caveat that I've seen that has that component to it. So, but it's something to keep in mind if you're gonna put in a Chase application, they will ask that. But it's good to hear all the other banks that are coming online, and it really is easiest if you keep your maintain your existing relationship. And I know it is very difficult to see all this money that we think is going to be spent and going to be gone and we're not going to get part of. But there's a number of lenders that are online that are doing it. There's more money coming, hopefully, to the community lenders and other lenders. And also another area that we haven't even talked about is the fintech, is the online lenders, is your Cabbage, and some of your other lenders that are online. Many of those are actually applying for certain status and actually could be a potential PPP lender. Now, the one thing I will throw out there is to try to, with your PPP loan with an online lender, is to assure that you're getting a PPP loan, and do that with everyone and read the terms and make sure everything is legit. So it looks like there are plenty of potential sources if you get shut out of, say, a major bank.
One thing, Kelly, I think I mentioned earlier, and I want to reemphasize, if you have your PPP, loan, everybody's asking, well, when am I going to get money? If you have your PPP loan approved and there is a loan authorization, then you will be getting money in 5 days. So, so if you do the math on it, if you applied, let's say Monday, you're looking at perhaps getting funding no later than Friday or Monday of next week. So again, and that's pretty darn quick. I can't, I'm a long-term lender, so I have the ability to say, this is moving, fairly fast, given the requirements on the lenders and on the customers. The one thing I want to make sure that everybody understands, if your lender is asking for 5 documents, please provide them with those 5 documents. If you provide them with 4, then that may slow your process down.
Good point. Okay, well, that's some PPP discussion. Now I want to do a poll, and I want to actually ask how many of you out there plan to apply to the PPP program, or have you already applied? And so launching the poll, it says yes or no. And again, this is our small businesses that we want to get feedback from. So have you applied? Have you not applied? Or you still hope to apply? And this will give us a great idea of how many of you have got through and are waiting, and how many of you don't plan to apply, and how many still plan to hopefully get an application in and get an application in to a lender. So right now it's the yes and I still need to apply that are taking the lead. Not a lot of people on the no side of things, but we'll give you another couple seconds to get in, get your vote tabulated. We're about 42% right now. And almost half of you have yes, that you have applied. Another 15 have not applied and don't anticipate applying. And I still plan to apply is also a large percentage, which is nearly 40%. So we're going to end the poll and hear the numbers. Here's how you voted. And 46% are in or plan to apply. And I still plan to apply. The last one, 39%. So wow, that's 85%, and kind of tells you partly some of the problems that we're running into. This is consistent around the country. So thank you for participating. And one last poll while we're at it. Okay, I'm kind of curious. And let me throw this poll up here. And the poll is, the reason I have not applied for a PPP is, A, my bank is not participating. They've suspended applications. So this is if you have not yet applied. My bank is yet to accept, and I need a bank or lender. And it could be just also, I maybe should have added, I haven't gotten around to it. So the biggest is my bank has not yet accepted applications, a little over 40%. Others have suspended applications, bank not participating. And this is the number of people who voted they plan to apply still. So we're going to end that poll, and here's the results. So you can see that. And it is, my bank has yet to accept applications. And there are those that are still out there that are just getting up to speed on it. So there it is by the numbers. And that's our PPP discussion. We'll get to some of your questions at the end. We might run a little bit long today. If you want to stick with us, we'll stick around with you. Can you stick around a little while, Keith, if we run over?
I'm good. Yeah.
Okay, well then let's move the discussion now to EIDL. You know, the EIDL, the wonderful economic injury disaster loan. And there's a couple things before we get into this discussion that I kind of want to float out there. And one is that if you've filed before March 30th, and many of you are getting emails to this effect, if you have applied to SBA through their disaster lending site, you need to revisit the platform and resubmit, and that's in order to get the $10,000 advance. The earlier applications were far more complex, and they did not have your banking information. So here they're going to ask for your routing number of your bank, the name of your bank, and your account number, so they can wire that money into your account once you're approved. Obviously, much easier process. Again, still, it's the condition on EIDL is condition is credit is not available elsewhere, and it is, I believe, designed to meet, or what I believe before today, to meet more of a longer term need for working capital. And if you're working with an SBDC advisor on either PPP or EIDL, please notify your advisor wherever they are about your results and your experience, because that helps us come next Wednesday when we sit here to do this again. And so let's open up the speculation and discussion and some of the things that we've learned. And Keith, a client of yours
Sure,
that we talked,
sure,
the very
sure.
first one that we had talked about, I believe filed back on March 17th or 18th.
Yeah, I had a client, actually it's a friend of mine that when the stimulus was first announced, they wanted to, get in line, and this was prior to the PPP loan. This was when you had the EIDL loan, and as Kelly alluded to, the SBA's platform for the EIDL loan initially was an old disaster loan platform, and I can't emphasize enough, this is such a different and unique situation that the preparation was different. The original EIDL platform was mainly for disasters like fires and floods. So if you had applied early on, it was a cumbersome application, and the process, you were somewhat out in the Netherlands, so to speak. That client, friend, applied on the 18th, went back, looked at the platform. A few days later, it had completely changed. There were I think there's been 3 changes to the platform, and again, all for the good. You had a older platform, didn't work. It was revised, wasn't good enough, and they have a newer platform. So what he had to do was, when he had the platform change, he reapplied. So, and the reapplication was the 28th, and I think the 30th is the latest deadline. Is that correct, Kelly? Okay. So what's the realistic? So you look back, his original application was on the 18th. He reapplied on the 28th. Last night, and this is real-time data, last night he received his an email indicating that he has been approved. And he was approved for, and I'll tell you, it was $15,000 along with the $10,000 advance of $25,000. That sounds like it's great news. Well, here's the issue. He had anticipated getting 5 times as much. So the question now, again, with the EIDL loan program, is what is the criteria, which had been one thing, has that changed on, how you're going to get a specific dollar amount. He was actually able to reach somebody at the SBA, which again, it's a positive, and had been indicated that you're going to be getting 2 times your monthly working capital, not based on his gross profits. So he's at a decision point. Does he take the 25 when he was expecting a little bit more? That only can tell you is to stay tuned. But again, that's real time. That's an EIDL application. That's a timeline. Initial 18th, then the 28th. Received a email, was able to access the portal, got the approved dollar amount, then wanted to call and get some clarification, was able to call and get some clarification. That's just one of the stories out there with the EIDL loan program.
And that's really helpful in trying to start getting more experiences from people that actually receive that. If you have one, throw it in the chat. We'll try to get to it. We'll try to get to your questions as we come up later on. But right now, what I wanted to do was to, since we've had our EIDL discussion right here, kind of go into detail maybe next week on EIDL when they start coming in. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of give you an example, and maybe the best way is just to go into Excel and do this. And so let me pull up this spreadsheet here. And it's kind of an example that I've used before. And it's called, Kelly's Grill. And so just real quick, let me just go through the profit and loss statement on it. And what it does is, the reason I'm going through the profit and loss, because we were giving information such as gross profit. And I want everybody to be sure on how that's calculated. This is typical, just standard restaurant, Kelly's Grill, really nice little place, did $800,000 a year, 35% on your payroll cost, your labor cost, and your purchases, your food cost, and your cost of goods sold, your gross profit, which we thought was going to be a determination in all this, maybe isn't now, but for PPP purposes, let's kind of analyze what this could look like. So there's just kind of a little P&L in the business. Now what we do is we go over to the annual payroll, and the annual payroll is going to be, with PPP, clearly more defined on the loan amount, whereas with EIDL, it's subjective based on what we're going to find out, how the rules have changed and what is actually the purpose. And with no real guidance, it's going to be your good word that helps us do that. So in this example, and I did have quite a few questions in the chat box on how it's calculated. So real quickly, your annual payroll, if you were in business for the entire 2019, a seasonal business, a business that started before February 15th, 2020, would use a different calculation. But this is the one that continues to kind of hold true. And so that's $20,000 a month if you divide that by 12, the multiplier supplied, and there's your loan amount. So you're going to provide the lender that you go through for your PPP, eventually, maybe not yet, but your calculation on how you determine that, quarterly payroll reports that will tie to that amount, and then other information that the bank requires. And like Keith says, make sure you do every one of those. So this is a little example on how you can maximize. And there's going to be different theories on this, because some businesses are going to be able to go in and they're going to try to maximize and get an entire grant. So this $50,000 that we see is the loan amount for PPP for Kelly's Grill. Now, if you take the 75% payroll on that, it's $37,500. And $37,500 is if we meet that amount, that will be forgiven. Now, again, not everybody is going to want their loan to be forgiven. They're going to need it for other things, but it's going to depend on a case-by-case basis. But this is the example that businesses that have applied for the PPP need to start thinking about. You've heard from Keith that they're going to fund this 5 days, and your clock, your 60-day clock on those payroll individuals, the employees that you bring back, is going to start if you use it for that. So then other eligible amounts, and see if we can use maybe 7,000 because rent's 3,500 a month, and utilities for the 2 months. And all of a sudden, if it's used for those three purposes, then there you go, down to zero. We still have federal payroll taxes on the payroll amount. So that is still going to need to be paid, or could likely be deferred until next year, but at some point it's going to need to be paid. So that's kind of an example that you could look at in your business on how you can maximize your PPP to turn it into a grant rather than more so of a loan. And again, this is the one example. Everybody's example is going to be different. Your expenses, your need for working capital, the fact what you get from EIDL and what you don't get, your resources that you have already. It's all things that you need to sit down with your SBDC advisor and talk about. So on this then, looking at that, then I go back and I look at my employees to try to figure out, well, gee, you know, my employees, very basically, I had, you know, one person who made 40,000 and ended up 6 people full-time, 4 people part-time that made basically minimum wage. And that's how I came to that. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to calculate my average cost per hour. And you can almost guess by looking at it. You have one high-paid employee, and now this is going to change to, even though the wage might have been less in 19, it's going to be $13 an hour and dollars an hour now to reflect the minimum wage. And just come up with an average cost. And the only reason I come up with this average cost is just to kind of give me then how many hours I'm going to need in a post-COVID-19 environment. And so continuing to look at this, how many employees I'm going to need to bring back once I start getting this is at $14 an hour. I'm going to have, if I try to do my full 37,500 at 14, it's going to give me a total hours of 2679. And assuming that I operate that for the entire 8 weeks, that's 335 hours per week. My full-time people up here, I calculate there's 7 of them that work 40 hours a week. That's only 280 hours per week. And my part-timers. So what this shows me is that with the calculation, if you get the full benefit out of that, you are going to need to hire most of your people back. And assume that going into that there could be a significant or even a minor portion of this that is not going to be forgiven as part of the grant. It needs to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. But these are the things that we're going to be looking at in the next few weeks ahead, and really something I really wanted you to get thinking about today before you sign on the dotted line for your PPP and start getting the money for it. Because once you get that, your 60-day window starts. If you sign on April 15th, it starts and runs till June 15th. So keep that in mind. And let me stop sharing and go back to the PowerPoint and go on, get back to the show. Okay, so there it was, the best on you're managing your business and managing the grant portion of it. One other thing that you could look into also is there's loan amortization schedules. The thing that I worry most about with the PPP and not the forgiven part is it's a very short-term loan. The first 6 months are going to be essentially deferred. So if I'm Kelly's Grill and I have 50,000 and I use 45,000 of that for non-grant purposes, I have a $45,000 loan that I have to repay in 18 months. And that will put a squeeze on your cash flow, given the fact that we don't know what the economy is going to look like moving forward. So these are all things on the managing side of things. Once this money breaks loose, that we've got to think about and we've got to look at and we've got to detail. Okay, so a little on the employee status. And I'll go through the rest of this fairly quickly because we see tons of questions. Hit the Q&A box. I know there's a lot also in the chat box. I'd hope to monitor that a little bit better, but I answered a few of yours, but not too many. But moving forward, if you want an example of that, if you want that example of the Excel spreadsheet, go to the chat box and just put in there that you'd like that emailed to you. If you want a recording of today's event where you can watch it later, put that in there as well. We'll use the chat box. In the past, we've used our survey, and some dummy talking to you right now forgot that he changed the survey to anonymous, and a lot of people requested some things from us, and it was anonymous, and we couldn't send them to you. So do that, tap that, and any other resources that you see today, we will gladly provide to you afterwards. But really, your employee status and dealing now with the fact that you realize to get the maximum amount of that grant, and that's going to prorate also into the rent and the utilities, because 75% needs to be payroll. So if your payroll's less, then that will also be a smaller amount for those items. So talk to your employees and involve them. You know, some of them want to perhaps be laid off and some perhaps do not. And so we are going from an extraordinarily tight labor market to one that's going to be completely different. And a lot of employers are talking about that. And make sure you try to make as many of the state resources available to them. Keith, can you chime in on the next two slides are the bridge loan and then the debt relief. I think you touched a little bit on debt relief, but it's really important. But have you seen much action or much interest in the SBA Express bridge loan?
I have not, and it's in that, you know, my guess, Kelly, as when I'm seeing a lot of the questions, when a lot of companies do their analysis, because the PPP program is not necessarily for everyone. And I can't emphasize that. I've had several clients that they ran the numbers, and whether it was the fact that, you know, some of their employees are making more money on unemployment, believe it or not, or some of their employees, whether it was social distancing that weren't going to come back, or it may have been a seasonal component, that they actually looked at the EIDL as a better long-term solution for the company, not necessarily to take advantage of the PPP. Having said that, I would sense that the SBA Express bridge loans may start to get a little more traction as the analysis of the PPP is done, or maybe even the frustration on getting access to the PPP. But I've not heard a lot about the people taking advantage of the Express quickly because of the dollar amount.
And the SBA debt relief.
Well, the debt relief is what we talked about. That was where the SBA is actually paying the loans for the 7A and the 504 loans for a 6-month period of time, and they're not deferment; they're an actual payment. The forgiveness piece, not seen a lot about that yet, but again, that may happen in the second phase of stimulus. I fully expect we will see multiple stimulus bills in the coming years. We will see multiple changes to all the programs, because albeit a lot of these things are kind of a Band-Aid-ish thing, we're going to have some businesses that are going to need some help in 2021 and 2022 based on things that happened this year. So I would definitely stay tuned for some future programs.
Keith, I got a question. Jim says that he received a 3-month deferral from his bank on his SBA 7A loan,
Right.
and then the debt relief came in after that. Is there any final rule on how that is going to be treated?
Yeah, my understanding is they have the ability to go back and get the debt relief, prior to the deferment. Now the mechanics of that, because you're basically asking for money back. I don't think that's been disclosed yet, Kelly. Again, this stuff is so relatively new, but I'm pretty confident in saying that the SBA is going to do everything they can to make that small business owner whole. But you're looking at a 7A, they're having to deal with the lender and the SBA. So stay tuned. I'm pretty sure you're going to see something like that.
And that's a little bit, we've been mentioning deferrals on a lot of different expenditures. And as it becomes more apparent what you're going to get from EIDL and PPP, deferrals might even be even more important.
Yeah, it would not surprise me after the next 6 months of payments that you're going to see a significant amount of deferrals. In some cases, some of these small businesses are not going to rebound until 2021, 2022. So there may be some additional deferrals and other things in the future that will happen.
Contractors and smaller sole props could use their stimulus check to try to help in their business beyond their other expenses that they have in their household. Those are some of the other funding issues. And we've been talking lately about a lot of different deferrals, and managing cash flow is going to really be important. And the cash flow forecast right there, if you want a copy of that, put that in the chat as well. We can send that out to you. There's a good possibility Kelly's Grill will actually show up on a cash flow forecast at some time in the future. We really hope to really do a lot more on the state resource side of things, particularly in the labor market. You did mention the unemployment, and for some workers, the unemployment benefit might be more than actually their minimum wage job. So we're seeing things like that are going to happen, and we're going to really try to dig into that and see a lot more. There's the family leave acts that we hope to, these will probably be a separate webinar that we'll probably schedule in the next week. Encouraging you to be creative, adapt that business, move your business forward with good leadership. And these are the things that are going to be coming up in our upcoming webinars. We're going to have on managing your business, because I snuck a little of that in today, but also on the HR function that we talked about. We're going to get a lot more feedback next week on EIDL and PPP. So that will be discussed next week. And resources for business planning, such as we have Live Plan, that you can use a Live Plan license with one of our CSUB associate consultants. Our student interns can work with you on business planning, cash management, and more. If you want another webinar to attend, there's another one tomorrow. So tomorrow, for the 21st Congressional District, Representative TJ Cox, and I have, I guess I should have flipped that, because I could have said, oh, Kelly Bearden, the SBDC director at the very bottom, is headlining that one, along with District Director Don Golick and Representative TJ Cox. So that's tomorrow. You could probably Google that or go to the website. There's the link below, but you probably won't be able to click through to that right now. Also, SBA is alerting people about scams and fraud. There's scammers out there. They are working. Be very careful. They're looking to get your social security number, your EIN, a variety of different ways. Any email is going to come for you from sba.gov. Check the email response, double check everything, and limit the amount of information you provide over the phone. We're open for business, and we're going to go to questions right now. So let's go to the questions and see what's in here. And go from here. So, and we'll try to find the ones that are most pertinent for most people. So first question, and you have a benefit right now. If you have a shorter question, you're going to get asked. Can you elaborate on what lenders are using to prioritize applications?
Well, I can tell you, Kelly, what I've been told, and again, it depends on the lending institution. Some are strictly going on first in, first out. What's your application date? Obviously, if you're a significant client at an independent bank, you're going, it's like anything else, you're going to move to the top. I mean, it's similar to a small business owner. If one of their larger clients is asking for something and one of the smaller clients is next, they're going to look at that one. But usually it's going to be based on, this was for the major banks, you're first in, you get assigned a number and then go from there. That's where it's so key to make sure you have a completed application and all your documentation, because the way it works is if you're missing item 3, then you get kicked back in the queue, and when you float back up, may be an issue.
Next question is, can you apply for EIDL while trying to find out if we qualify for the PPP? I'm afraid I won't get it due to being a sole prop with no actual employees. And let me start with this one, Keith. Sole props and no employees, the actual date to begin accepting applications from banks is this Friday, April the 10th. So you have not been able to apply. And Keith, what about apply for EIDL? I definitely would.
Yeah, you can actually do, once PPP is eligible, you can do both. Now, it's obvious, it's been, said before, if you've gotten any information, you can't do the same expense item on both loans. So the EIDL, let's say you get an EIDL loan and you have $10,000 carved out for payroll, and then you apply for the PPP and it has that same $10,000, that will be subtracted out. So yeah, you can apply for both, and probably it's about 50% of the clients out there that are applying for both EIDL and the PPP. So definitely, again, keep in mind you have to, and that's where you have to do your analysis. You have to, look at, all right, what's best for the organization and employees. Again, EIDL is 30-year, 3.75%, no payments for the first 6 months, no prepayment penalty. PPP has the loan forgiveness component if you meet the, or you're at the specified employee level when they're measuring it. So you really want to weigh both of them, and it's going to take some analysis on your part, and you may have to reach out to your accountant or professional provider, which a lot of them are running these scenarios for their clients as we speak.
And I do recommend that all sole proprietorships with no employees apply for EIDL if you have a need, because it comes down to demonstrating that you need the money in order to actually get the disaster loan. But if you have the need, I recommend you apply for it. Next question is, I have been in business for less than a year. I submitted my 19 and my 19 P&L and my balance sheet. Keith, do you feel this would be sufficient information?
Is this for the PPP or is this for the EIDL?
It does not specify, so.
Well, that's a significant amount of information they want, but there's probably some other guidelines and other documentation that they're going to want to ask for. So that's where you're going to want to get into specific, whoever the lender is. Okay, what are you looking for the, if it's a lender, it's the PPP. If it's EIDL, that's directly SBA online. And
my guess would be that's an EIDL application that was before the portal opened on 3/30.
Yeah, I
when
think
they were requiring a lot more information. So they will get back with you if it's the EIDL, and they will have you work with a case manager from SBA, and they will assist you on any potential things you need to add to that. Okay, next question. What is available for a mom and pop small business with no employees needing help with rent and utilities?
I think we're still going back to the EIDL until the PPP is open for Friday. That's the answer.
Yeah, I agree. The EIDL right now for sure, and then potentially being a sole prop on Friday when the PPP starts up, going that way, especially with the help on rent and utilities. But again,
I will add one other. Kelly, I would add one other thing. I think it sounds like they are a perfect SBDC consultant client. I would have them reach out to your organization and see if they can get tied in with a consultant that will also help them in that analysis.
Okay, we own a restaurant, and I have furloughed about 130 employees and still have 30 working. The application for PPP asks how many jobs will be retained. Is it asking before or after the stay-home orders are lifted? That is a great question. Keith, you want to try that one?
Well, I thought it was at the February 15th deadline. I mean, and that's where the tricky part comes in on with the PPP loan. You have to then look at, is your business going to turn around and you have that same level when you're at that measuring point? And I can't answer that question. So that's where the idle may be the better scenario as opposed to the PPP, where if you don't meet that staffing number, then that turns into more of a short-term loan.
Yeah, I love the question. I think it's a great question because it makes us think that we really don't know when the stay-at-home order is going to be lifted and how we're going to be able to utilize our employees. And that's a variable moving target as we move forward out of this mess. So so that's going to be a variable probably for most businesses, depending on the essentiality of it, and if that's a word, and other factors. Okay. Next question. Do I need a high credit score to get approved for EIDL? If so, can I get a cosigner to help with the loan?
Well, I know part of the matrix that the SBA is looking at when they make the decision on EIDL is looking at credit scores and looking at, I think they're using Experian. I haven't confirmed that, maybe you know that. So far as a co-signer, that is that's a good question. I've not encountered that. I think the program's intended for the existing business owner, and co-signer. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, and I think we saw a couple of different credit score numbers that were thrown out there, one being 650 and one being 680. They do not publish that information. They don't tell us. That's just kind of the number that we had heard from previous disasters. The thing that I did hear is that originally, I think if it was at 650, 680, and they denied a lot of applications early in the process, and they were going to go back and try to look at those again that they had denied and actually look toward approving more of those, many more of those. So it sounds like after the stimulus that the actual credit underwriting for the EIDL became a little bit more moderate. So that is one thing that we are hoping to see. Hey, Keith, my 19 net income for sole proprietor was significantly less than in previous years due to some large purchases. Am I still limited on what I can apply for income to the PPP?
Well, the PPP is based on again, it's an employee and what your salary so far as is the question, is their gross income down because if you're looking at they bought something, then they're expensing it off. So that's another, not issue, but that's flowing to their net. So not sure on the question. Repeat that again, Kelly.
I'm sorry, I've scrolled away from it.
I think some of these questions, Kelly, what we can do is we can revisit them. I see that we're looking at about 66 questions now. I'm pretty sure probably half of them are answered in some form, but some of the ones that are in specific area, I think either yourself or myself or one of the consultants can address those issues.
Yeah, and I will cruise through, since we weren't able to get into the chat box, I will go through the chat box. That is one thing that I can print out afterwards and gives me a lot of flexibility in going through and responding individually to a lot of those questions. So if you had a more specific type question, we looked for the more general ones, and doing that, you know, just kind of moving forward allows that to happen. So we're 15 minutes over. I think that's it for this one. Keith Brice, Mid-State Development Corporation. Thanks for your expertise in joining us today, and appreciate everybody out there for putting up with us for the last hour and 15 minutes. We will get the questions. Again, if you have anything that you would like, the link for the recording, if you would like the cash flow forecast or the example I ran through in Excel, throw it in the chat box and I will email that out to you. For Keith Brice, I'm Kelly Bearden. We're signing off. We'll see you next week. Have a great day. Goodbye, everyone.